and welcome to Ultimate Voices Europe, the EUF's new diversity podcast, where we highlight backgrounds and perspectives that don't always get the spotlight. My name is Jakob. My pronouns are they, them. I'm from Vienna.
And my name is Anika. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm from Zurich. And after a short summer break, we're back with a new episode.
And our guest today is Nils Ostertag, a freshly crowned bronze medalist from EMUC and a member of the Club FRAB, a mixed team in Germany. Hello, Nils.
Hi, Nils.
Hey.
Would you mind telling us where you're from, where you're joining us from now, and what your plans are for this season?
Sure. Thank you for the invitation of joining you in this podcast. After a couple of celebrities that I've heard here already, so I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Nils Ostertag. Pronouns are he, him. And I'm currently living in Frankfurt, also playing with the local club mixed team FRUP. Some might know him maybe from last year's EUC. But I've also joined this season, not going in the ranking too high. But yeah, we'll still play in our mixed season. This is what I'm currently doing or currently playing. And speaking back of this year, as you said already, I was part of the German Masters team, mixed team in Sweden and Lund, and came back with the bronze medal. That was a good award. I'm still excited about it. And I think that was the highlight of the year already.
Sounds like a good highlight for sure. Nils, so I think there's two reasons for us to have you on, right? One being that you're also a former member of the DEI committee with us. So this is how we got to know Nils. Because when the committee started, we were all in it together. And the other one is that you're an openly gay man as part of the Ultimate community. So that's something we would like to talk about today with you a little bit.
Maybe we can just start with the first question on the second topic. And maybe you want to share what it means for you to be an openly gay man in the Ultimate community.
Yeah, sure. The question sounds a little like I would have expectations or not on maybe also comparing to other sports, but to be honest, I don't really, if I can say that, I don't really feel any difference of being an openly gay man within our sport, as there are literally no boundaries. It's a really welcoming community. That's what I really celebrate and want to highlight on the sport we're doing, is that everybody's welcome. And honestly, it just doesn't matter what gender you are, what sexuality you have, or what pronouns you use. Everybody's welcome. And that's, I think, one of the major benefits of Ultimate Frisbee. I think there's nothing special to say, as it is just normal. And I think it's good to say normal.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. I think for you to experience it that way. And if we were to compare it to other sports, I do think, I guess, there's less openly gay men in other team sports. I think there's other sports with other fairly well-known gay athletes. But if you look at, I don't know, soccer, for example, or football, I actually say football, I'm from Europe. There's, I think, no openly gay man in any of the bigger leagues. I know for a fact that there's literally jobs where people are consultants for team on how to hide the gay identity of football players, and there's fake wives. There's so much, I don't know, pressure to be straight. And I'm, I don't know, really happy to hear from you that the Ultimate community is such an open place that doesn't even come to mind to anyone.
Yeah. I think, as you just mentioned, soccer and the pressure of not being out is the impression I have, especially with soccer, is that within the female division, I think it's not as much as pressure, and I wonder why. So why can the female players be openly out and not fear any restrictions, but within the male division, it's still such a taboo to come out or play as an openly gay man. And I'm really happy that within our sport, this is no difference, no matter what gender you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure great to hear. I think sort of working also in sports and gender issues, to me, hearing that doesn't come as a surprise, or like the fact that in football, or I also know it, like, for example, from professional basketball, like WNBA, is a very queer league. That is just, I think, sort of queerness for women or like female athletes is just much more normalized than for male athletes. And I do think, because obviously we're talking about sexuality here, right? But that is very closely tied to the concept of gender and like gender conformity. And while your sexuality, of course, doesn't necessarily say anything as to how well you conform sort of within the stereotypical gender roles, I do think there's like a trend sort of to observe that queer people are just more likely to be conform. And then while masculinity sort of is just tied to, or like the sports world is tied to like normative masculinity, right? In terms of like toughness and hardness and like all these stereotypes that also female athletes have to adhere to in some form or show in order to be able to survive and succeed in the sports world. I think in that sense, maybe it makes sense sort of that queerness is more prevalent in female sports. But of course, just because people don't show it doesn't mean they don't have it. And like, I think it's probably more a question of how okay it is to be openly out instead of how queer people actually are.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I guess if you do team sports, especially as a woman, and like football is not the first thing to come to mind when we think about like gender stereotypes. Women do, I don't know, ballet and do ice skating and stuff. You're already breaking some kind of norm. So then it's, I don't know, a more welcoming space anyways, the place where everyone kind of breaks at least one norm already. Then you're also more accepting of different sexualities and gender identities and stuff. Yeah.
Maybe Nils, to sort of tie back to that, I'm just curious for you, like completely unrelated to your sexuality, have you, like within Frisbee sort of and the Frisbee world, any like instances in mind where sort of you did or did not fit the sort of stereotypical masculine role, and how that affected you, maybe as a teammate or as a player, as an athlete?
No, honestly, I don't think so. I'm trying to think back, but I mean, as negative instances would be, you would memorize them longer. There's nothing coming to my mind. And I think that's just another example of how well we're doing in our sport with equality and inclusion, that I have never had any issues. No bad talking, no weird glances.
That's sweet.
I'm just a member of a team and doing my thing, trying to do it as best as possible, no matter if gay or not gay. And I'm actually really happy that you can see that also gay people can play as high intensity athletes, like Levke is doing it, myself I'm doing it. Yeah,
definitely. This might be a controversial question, but do you think it's also mainly because you've been playing on mixed teams, or have you mainly been playing on mixed teams? Is that something that adds to it, or not at all?
I don't know if there is a correlation to that. I have been playing mixed longer, definitely. I started playing in 2015, and I think for the first 3 or 4 years I was only playing mixed before I first started open. And back then for me it was a little of a stereotype that open is going to be a little more rough and all the boys are yelling and it's not as much fun because there's a lot more physicality going on, and I wasn't sure to go and see and experience that. But when I did, I was surprised how also really good the open division is, and not as bad as I thought. It's just another kind of intensity. but still the same level of inclusion, I'd say. At least I didn't notice any difference when it came to my sexuality, or it actually wasn't never even a topic. And that's the good part, I think, that, you don't need to talk about it because nobody cares. Yeah.
Nice.
That is very sweet. And also good to hear that like you didn't really know the difference between divisions. Tied to that, I think, so I have a question for you, and that is, or first of all, an observation or like an interpretation, and that is, I think part of, so what you describe, right, as this like very positive experience of like being fully able to be yourself and like be seen as that, and also just able and allowed to exist and like being welcome. To me, it sounds like a big part of that is also you like just being yourself very like openly and sort of strongly. And I think if you weren't, it might also be like less normalized. You're a gay man like the way you are, sort of, just existing unapologetically, sort of. And I think that's super beautiful. I do imagine that, especially for younger people who are maybe like joining the community, maybe coming from a different sport where things are different, that might not be so natural, sort of, to start with. So just wondering, like, maybe if you would be able to talk about this a little bit, like what do you think would help young people, sort of, who maybe are just joining the community or just joining a team where they don't know sort of what the vibes are, to be able to be themselves and express themselves and sort of exist and take the space that they need?
Right. Well, in terms of advices for younger people, I think it's you might want to separate the personal life and the sport life in that term. That the only advice, I don't really want to give advices, but the one thing I would say is you want to be comfortable with yourself first, no matter of the sport. Like in your personal life, if you're comfortable enough to be out and to live out as a queer person, then the sport should not be given any boundaries to you either. So you can, you don't need, that's what I do. I don't introduce myself as a gay person. I'm saying, hey, I'm Nils. I'm not saying, hey, I'm Nils, I'm gay, because I hope that nobody really cares. It doesn't matter. And that's the only thing I do want to give to the younger people is, if you're struggling, be comfortable, be brave or strong enough to come out for yourself within your personal life. And if you do that, then the sport is no harm. It's not giving you any harm or making any differences. You're just welcome. And yeah, be as you are.
That's a good message, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I guess that really helps, like in the ultimate community, that it is mostly so open, and we can just only hope that other sports can kind of like get on track. I don't know if that's the right saying. What do you think you would wish for other sports that they can kind of take from us?
I think I would just repeat myself in that terms, that I'm just hoping that actually nobody cares. So why do we, the thing that we even have to ask the question about what do you wish for other sports, or how do you think people could be out in other sports like soccer or so? I wish that we don't even need to ask that questions, because it just doesn't matter. You can be a good or not so good player in any sport, but it does not interfere with your sexuality. So I want to make the people see that it doesn't matter what sexuality you got. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you worse. Yeah, I think that's my only wish. It just should not be a big topic anymore. It's just a normal thing. Just as nobody asks, are you lefty or righty? Of course, it does make a little difference in ultimate. As can, there's fewer people being lefties, and they're always more feel like more welcome. That's a wrong impression, but you know what I mean. The lefties are likely to be in a team. No, but just that doesn't matter if you're lefty or righty. Or I wish that in all sports, it does not matter if you're gay, if you're straight, if you're bi, if you're trans, or if you're any kind of queer.
Yeah. I think So I totally agree with you, and I think that's actually like a nice statement to talk about, because sort of given how you're now describing, like, oh, I'm having no issues sort of being a gay man, and like it's not a big deal in the ultimate community. I think, or I as a listener would actually wonder, okay, so like why are we having this episode? Why are we talking about this if it's a non-issue? And like I think, like you said, right, it's supposed to be a non-issue, and I think maybe in ultimate, or like in the teams that you've played in, like sort of you have the privilege that it isn't, and I think that's something beautiful and like to appreciate. But I think just sort of taking away from that, like it's the same thing. So sexuality is one thing, right? Like pronouns, for example, people introducing themselves with their pronouns, sort of making a deal about that, or like all these things wouldn't be necessary at all, right? If it were really a non-issue, like in all of the world we are, and like ultimate, of course, is still part of a wider world, where sexuality and gender are still relevant in that sense, or like sometimes make a difference in how you're perceived and treated. So I think we can just be glad that in ultimate it's a little bit better.
And now just think a little more about the question is, if I would give a little story from my younger ages, is I think earlier in life I was a little scared of maybe I might not be as fast, maybe I might not be able to jump as high or so, and then the people would judge me for being gay and not being as fast or as tall or whatsoever. But now, luckily, I feel in ultimate I can say the more I train, the better I get. And now it really doesn't matter if I'm gay or not. I'm running, and sometimes I'm running faster as other people, sometimes I'm running slower. But
As we all do.
It has nothing to do with who I love or who I live with. It's just a matter of practice or no practice.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's a very common experience of people from marginalized groups or communities, that there's always a feeling that you kind of have to prove yourself, and often prove yourself a little more maybe than other people, and kind of show people that you've earned your spot. I think that's an experience, I don't know, not just queer people make, but people of kind of all marginalized communities. And I don't know, you have to overperform to be seen as an equal.
Or at least you get the impression that you have to.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to.
Maybe we don't, but like, yeah. And often they do, I think. Yeah. All right. Well, following up on that, I mean, so we already mentioned like sort of how Ultimate and the teams that you've been part of have been doing great in that regard of like being welcoming and stuff. I'm wondering because obviously like you play in Germany, I play in Austria, Anika is from Switzerland. Like these are all countries where that's probably also quite normalized. And I do know, and also have heard from like discussions I've had as recently as like 2 weeks ago, I was at Diskin camp, and there's people from many different like nationalities coming together, right? And then it's like, oh, not everybody is like from a culture or a country where queerness, for example, is super normalized. And then so I think if you're like part of a club and sort of trying to build an environment like that within a culture that's maybe less progressive in that sense, I think it's an interesting question to ask yourself, like what makes the German Frisbee community or like the teams you've been part of so good at being welcoming, and like how can people who maybe wanna change to become more progressive in their own clubs, for example, how can people do that, and like what are the things to look out for, or what are good practices? So I'm wondering, Nils, for you, like would you have anything to say, like, oh, what is it that made you feel welcome, and like I don't know, what are little things a club or a team can do to help with that?
Oh, all right, that's a hard question, just because I really don't know the answer of like what happened to me that I felt especially welcome, because I think and that might be hopefully the best answer, is that I just felt as welcome as any other not queer people in the team. mixed as just as much as open. I think it was good to start mixed. It's hard to put it in words. I don't know why I feel a little more comfortable with playing mixed, and I don't think that it's correlated to my sexuality or not. It's just I don't know, like a little warmer surrounding, but there's honestly no reason why I would feel that. But I really don't have any advice or on teams to make better or take out of it. As I mean, I was a part of the team. Yeah, there's nothing that made the team especially well to make me feel comfortable other than just accepting me without asking a lot. It's not like they would come up after every practice and ask me again, hey, how is it as a gay person? And they just didn't do it. And I think that's what makes it comfortable for me, that I'm just one of the members.
Yeah, I guess that's also probably maybe to do that with you living in Germany, and like Germany being mostly very accepting of queer people, and also your personality, probably, that you didn't want to be asked if other people that might want to be asked. It always also depends on the personal preferences. But I guess in a team like in Hungary, or like where like Orban banished pride or something, maybe people would feel differently and would maybe like appreciate, I don't know, the team wearing like a little rainbow, or like actively saying that people are welcome. Whereas in other countries where it's more normalized to be
like implied
part of the LGBTI community, it's easier, I don't know, not to have some kind of action.
I see what you mean now. I mean, I've been to a couple of tournaments now in a lot of different countries, and I would say to all the countries I've been, and it's, especially not been like Hungary or states that are a little less progressive on DEI or equality and inclusiveness in general. But the countries I have been to, it was just as easy as Germany. But they got pretty much the same progression. But I cannot give advices because I've never been. I don't know how it is to not being able to come out, or maybe not having the courage to come out for certain reasons, maybe political. But I would encourage them to join the tournaments in countries where it really doesn't matter. Like Windmill is a really safe spot. Come to Windmill. And, I've been playing with Rainbow Brigade a couple of tournaments now, also twice Windmill, and they give in talks. So I would encourage them to go and join the talks and have their space right there, and ask other members of countries where it is not a problem, and maybe with that exchange of thinkings, and maybe they can take some takeaway out of it, just by listening, by asking, by getting into conversations with other openly out queer people.
Yeah, I do think I agree, and I also, like, for myself, just from my own experience, like as a queer person, like seeing other queer people at a tournament, or like in a club, or like at least queer red people, like you don't really know often, right? But sort of from the vibe, like that really makes a difference with how I feel at a tournament. For example, Anika and I, we were at the Burning Ape 3 weeks ago in Switzerland. That was like for me personally, like a super cute atmosphere to be there. And there were like a lot of people that I like just from looks, or like the first interaction I had with them, I read as like queer. And that made me like feel more comfortable as well. Right. And that's like, not anything that anybody can just do. But I think, the more people, are like out and about sort of, and just being themselves, I think the easier it is for others to be that as well. And then I'm also, like Anika, what you already mentioned, like with sort of, I don't know, wearing a little pride thing. Like we often see like people wear wristband, like sweatbands, or like with the pride flag or the trans flag. Or I mean, a lot of the merch stores nowadays have like kind of pride themed merchandise. I think little things like this, maybe they're just symbolic, but I think they do make a difference for people that like see that and are like, oh, like this is a place
Definitely.
where I can be.
Definitely. I guess just visibility just really matters. Even if it's, I don't know, even with pride, sometimes we say, I don't know, big corporations wearing all of these pride things. But
Yeah.
anyways, whenever I see someone who has a little pride pin, like a little rainbow flag, it still makes me a little bit happier and more feel more welcome in a place. And like the same applies to any environment, so also to Ultimate. It makes me happy when I play against opponents where some players wear something with a rainbow, because I don't know, feel safer. And I also, like, I feel safer and my teammates feel safer, and just more welcomed, in that space and on that field, even with opponents, with teammates, with tournaments, with parties, whatever. I think it does make a difference. And though sometimes we, I don't know, frown or smile upon it, it's still.
And I think it's still on a good level of not exaggerating with all the pride stuff. I think you just mentioned it, Anika, that it shouldn't be coming on an over level or overdose of that, because the major point why we're playing Frisbee still should be competing against each other. It's a sport. We want to be good. We want to win championships or tournaments. Of course, within a really a comfortable environment and a safe space. That's why we highlight our sport as well. But the major reason for me, at least, still is I want to go and compete, and measure my team with the other teams. So I'm happy. Yeah, it's about keeping the level of not putting too much pride stamp on it, but still sticking to our core values of keeping it a sport, a competitive sport.
Yeah, I guess there it also depends on like maybe the setting, right? Because you mentioned you played with Rainbow Brigade, and I would imagine that was very colorful and very very much out there, which is good. And I also maybe disagree with you a little bit, where I think there can be a lot of pride stuff or a lot of stances. It doesn't even have to be just about queerness, right? There can be a lot of other signs and flags, maybe, and things to show support of different groups, while still staying competitive.
Right. Sorry, I did not. I just want to clarify that I don't want to say don't do it. I'm really happy. I'm also happy for every rainbow I see, and putting the little rainbow symbols on your shirt always gives me a little smile too. I'm happy that we're all supportive. Just want to highlight that there is it shouldn't be the bigger value of our sport too. It's really good. I'm really highlighting the inclusivity and equality, but still it's the competitive thing we're doing it for. And the Rainbow Brigade, as you mentioned, it is, and I think that's why it's a really good, really great project. Is yes, it's a team of queer athletes, but I think the major message they wanted to send out is a team of high level athletes, and they can compete within the top teams, amongst the top teams. And just to show, yes, we're queer, but it does not mean that we're not as good in sports. So that's a really good thing of playing in Rainbow Brigade.
And a great message as well.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, I think like this, for me, like listening to this back and forth between you now, like just makes me think of sort of like what is queerness, for example, right? Or like the pride flag, it's a political flag in one sense, and like it's a political statement, right? To show it. And like why people show it, like it's part of their identity, right? It's part of who they are. And then, but identities are like not singular. And in that sense, like Nils, if I understand correctly, like sort of being like in the Frisbee world and like playing at tournaments and competing stuff, like nobody's, like even the queerest of all athletes, like nobody's identity would be singularly like I'm gay, I'm here. But like they're also an athlete. They're also, I don't know, like they have a job, they have a social life, they have hobbies, right? Like identities are multifaceted, and so being queer can be maybe a very central part, like to some people's identities. Maybe there's other queer people whose identity like is not so closely tied to their queerness, still are queer. And then I think just because like Frisbee is still a self like finance sport that we all like have to put a lot of time and also money and like effort into be able to do that and like travel to all these tournaments and stuff. Being an athlete or being a Frisbee player is also a very large part of our identity. And so yeah, I think it's just nice that it can coexist and also important to like give space to both sides and all the other sides that are there.
Definitely, definitely. And I think like deep down, Nils and I also agree. I think it's also important that people aren't reduced to just one of their identities.
Exactly.
I think is what you were saying. And I completely agree. And we are still first and foremost a sport and want to be seen as athletes. I definitely agree with that.
Right. I think that's a good quote that you just said. I want to be seen as an athlete, not as an openly gay man in sport.
Yeah. And that's so fair.
Yeah, completely fair. And yeah, I mean, I think like, right, there's like a lot of very high profile like queer athletes in Ultimate. Like we've had Livka here on this podcast, Joe White from the US, or like the Cardinal sisters. Like I think all of those are like first and foremost being seen as athletes because they're crazy good at Frisbee.
Right.
And then that can just coexist with like queerness. And I think that's the nice thing about Ultimate, right?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
That is possible, whereas in other sports it might not be as much. Yeah.
Great. I love that conversation.
All right.
It's good talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. Nils, I think we also asked you, like every guest, to bring us a question, like for us as the committee or like as the host of this podcast, that we can discuss about. So, what did you bring us?
Sure. I thought about something, and it might not be only related to just this DEI surrounding now, but a general question of a sport that I keep asking myself a lot. But I do ask it to myself sometimes. Is like, what happens, or like what benefits or maybe disadvantages you see if for a sport that we're doing now self-paid, not really with financial support, what benefits or disadvantages would it have if we became a financially supported sport and being related to financial sponsoring and all that, and having all of a sudden boundaries, and also what effect would it then have on our DEI progression that we're just having now, and having a really good open-mindedness within our sport.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I find it also interesting that we circle back to financial accessibility and finances in general in our sport in almost every episode so far. So it is a big topic, and it is a big topic that is tied to diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's a great question. There is definitely disadvantages and advantages. I think of like people being able to have access to our sport that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it by their performance, right? They would, if someone is good, they get paid and they can go to a lot more tournaments and get more possibilities. That's like a first thought. And then I'm gonna let Jakob or you think of more. I'm gonna think of I don't know, one of the disadvantages, I guess. Actually, I'm blanking right now. I'm sure there's many. I only you talk.
I mean, thank you for this great question, Nils. I actually think it ties quite nicely to the conversation we've just been having, because sort of the fact that Ultimate is like mostly self-financed still is just a very central part to our sport. And like just thinking back of the past episodes we've had where we discussed this, like Anika said, like accessibility for like financially less privileged people is a big diversity issue that I think also a lot of people, like we have been talking about it like at a podcast, and within the committee it's also been like a topic we're thinking about like how to address. But at the bottom line, you need the money from somewhere, right? And then I'm also thinking back of like the episode we had with Levke, where she talked about like her experience like in the US and how sort of also like in college sports, or like Ultimate is just a bit more institutionalized, and therefore also has just more potential sort of like to shape like the sports structure that they're part of, and like to invite people and like actively create spaces. So I think, yeah, like having more, like generally having more money within Ultimate, like within a federation or something, also means having more money for projects, right? And having like, for example, I mean, that's just something that we do in our work a lot, is like, in the Austrian sports world, like think about, how can we like nudge sort of sport federations towards more equity, like in gender, or like being more inclusive, or like having better safeguarding policies, and tie that to subsidies. So there's like an incentive for them to actually like have policies in place, to make their sports world a better world, or like a more inclusive or a safe place. Like if you have money, you can do that, right? Because you can just be like, hey, you club, if you don't have like a policy on this, you don't get any money, or like you get less money. Which is, I think most Ultimate federations are still very far removed from that. That's one part I have. Feel free to interrupt me if you, yeah, Anika.
I think what I thought of as well is kind of like when you said about you can kind of like steer where the money goes and what you invest in. I think is if that ever happened to Ultimate, there would have to be, I don't know, some kind of mechanisms where we support projects like this, but also on how the money goes to which athletes. And because oftentimes we talked about this too, visibility and things like that, and that would probably get you more money because maybe you're getting more sponsors, or you're getting, and that's definitely something where gender inclusion also comes in place, because I think it's still very much one-sided, and who gets a lot of visibility. I think it's a lot better in Ultimate, but I think that's just something that would have to be in people's minds.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm asking myself the question is mostly that, within our sport, and probably with all the other sports that are self-financed, is the paradox of you start when you're young and don't have money, right? Especially your sport. I have no clue about the number, but I would randomly guess it's 70 to 80% of the players starting within university. When money is short, and then you'll have to see how to get to all the tournaments, how to get your gear, how to come up for all the costs that our sport is putting on us. And then, once you get older, you don't, at some point you don't get better anymore. So it's, but then that's the time when you have the money to maybe being more able for more to pay more tournaments and stuff. So what systems could we build if we don't really step into a big financial sport, but within our federation, as you said, to support ourselves? There is a cute little story that I want to share maybe at that point, is that in my early years, I think maybe my first or second Copa Pescadisco, I don't know if you've heard of it, is this head tournament on Mallorca happening once a year. Just a fun tournament that I went early on, and there was somebody, because I was short on money too, and the people usually would go to a team dinner at night, and the second night I think I wanted to skip because short on money, didn't want to spend much money on going out for dinner. And then one of my teammates said, well, I'll pay for you, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, but then I need to pay you back at some point. And he's like, what you do once you get older and get your money, make sure you'll pay some younger player who is not able to pay for that dinner yet. And that was a really quite a benchmark at a time, hearing him saying that, and I still have it in my head, and I'll do it once in a while when I see somebody younger of our team having issues. Then we'll see how we can crowdfund them to make sure they all get the same possibilities or same chances to go to tournaments.
Yeah, I've also been part of teams where stuff like this or similar things happen, and I think it's been very, very nice, both on the receiving and the giving end. But yeah, I just want to circle back to the question about like sort of how that would change, if, or like also what impact that would have on like DEI. If we were like a more monetarized sport, because I just want to like acknowledge at this point, like I think the main goal of most sports federations, right, and for sure WIFDF and EUF, is like moving that way, right? Like we're looking to get more sponsors and like get more money sort of into Ultimate just to grow it and to be able to like also professionalize, right? And I think because that's also like I work for the Austrian Federation and do a lot of media work there, so that's something I think about a lot. Is like, oh, like from a media side, what can you do to grow a sport and to gain like an audience? And I think you can see it like with the UFA, with Artiworld, with also like in Europe with RGTV, like grow a sport is often two personalities, and that means you market individuals for what they do. And we've seen that like time and time again, and we've also talked about this on our last episode with Maria, right? That there's just like individuals that do get like a lot of sort of attention and like coverage, and that is, I think, a good and necessary avenue to go, like if we want to grow our sport and professionalize it. And then there's also, of course, drawbacks, because there's a lot of like great people and athletes that get maybe less like attention or coverage. And I just think it's something to think about. Like, I think it is a trade-off we are already actively making. And for now, like, it doesn't have a lot of consequences. Like maybe there's a bunch of individuals who have like, I don't know, who are like PE sponsored athletes, or like have a like our Tokai ambassador, stuff like that, right? So it's like the little sponsorships we have in Ultimate, some people get, and they benefit from that, of course, and that's great for them. And I think everybody who gets something like this deserves it, really, because like we know how much work people put into it. But then if I'm thinking like, oh, the money is so scarce in Ultimate, like in a perfect world, I would rather have this money from, I don't know, Greatest or BE or Tokai go to like some country where people can't even afford to go to national tournaments, right? But that's not happening, because we also need to grow these names and these people and like grow their brand in order to eventually like get more money in.
Yeah,
that's just a thought I have.
Yeah, it's a I don't know. What do you say? A two-sided sword.
Yeah, I think so.
Going into more of a professional and financial way.
Yeah, for sure. And just and then I'm done. Like one more thought, and that is sort of a potential disadvantage of like becoming a more monetarized sport, or like professionalized, is and I think you can already see that like with WFDF and like adhering to the Olympics code. Also talked about this before, but like for example, EUF now, right? Like the European Federation, we have a gender inclusion policy that is very like inclusive and sort of liberal in that sense, because EUF decide that's how we do it, and that's how we decided to do it. Whereas WIFDF is like trying to get Ultimate into the Olympics, right? So it's adhering to the IOC guidelines, which are much more strict and like much more guided by sort of current political directions in that sense. So I think that's already like very clear. Like, oh, you want to be more professionalized. Like you want more. In the end, it's funds, right, from governments. You are ending up like being tied to political decisions more and more. And then, given the current political landscape with DEI projects generally, I think if we're thinking about that and like the trend it's going, that probably will mean less like DEI projects generally being tied to like what the current political status quo is. And that might change, of course, but I think that's something like beautiful about EUF and like the EUCS and like all the EUF tournaments, where it's like it's not monetarized, and therefore EUF has a lot of liberty to choose their policies
while still having the member states approve of everything, but there's still a lot more liberty.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course, like approve it, because that's good that you mentioned it, because there's been questions about this as well. All member states, all member federations have approved, like for example, our gender inclusion policy. But yeah, I think it's just like also acknowledging the liberty that the EUF now has to enact policies as it fit, whereas the WFDF does not or cannot at the moment. And that's something that will continue if we were to monetize the sport more.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for this. Has brought up a really interesting conversation. All right. We're moving into the last part of our episode where we would love to ask you to shout out a person or initiative or community that has shaped you or means a lot to you, ideally connected to diversity.
Sure. I think I got just instantly now 2 people coming to my mind. When you said shaped me, I can say I'm not connected to DEI, but really shaped me or made me step into a little more high level ultimate was a good friend of mine, Sebastian Schreiber. He used to live with me in Münster. We were kind of neighbors, and I think we approximately started at the same time. Ultimate, he's by the way now playing for MUC and Tiefseetaucher in München. That's where or Munich, where they just moved. So we started approximately the same. He, I think, started like half a year earlier. And just, as any player, doing a little playing fun ultimate for the first couple of years. And then at some point we decided both, let's make it to the first mixed team. Let's play a little more competitive. And that's when we decided to meet every other day almost, and go throw, do some runs, do athletics, do cuts. So we pushed ourselves because also we had the Unisport campus right around the corner. We met frequently and pushed ourselves, and that's how we equally got a lot better within 1 or 2 years. And if he wasn't there, I think I would probably not be at the same level as I'm playing now. So I'm really thankful for being there at that time and pushing ourselves together. Likewise. And then the other person connected to the DEI, though, I think was Penny Wu.
Mhm.
She's a queer player, trans player actually, from the US. Also one of the lead members of Rainbow Brigade. And she's got a really inspiring character and just a great person. Seeing her play on the pitch is just the level of competitiveness I do want to see in all the people, no matter if queer or not queer. And then off the field, she's got inspiring talks about just these topics that we're talking about now for several minutes, not an hour yet, but for some time. Now she's a role model on many levels. I'm really looking up to her. Also, shout out, hopefully, that you might invite her at some point to this podcast. Although she's not Europe, I don't know if that's a good possibility, though. But yeah, she is a great player, and I really look up to her.
Yeah, that's 2 really lovely shout outs. Thank you for sharing, Nils. And we've been thinking on who to invite. But I think we have to stick to Europe for now. Europe. I would love to have her.
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry for bringing it up, but
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, I think we still have a lot of interesting people from Europe to talk about, but I'm sure Penny would be a great person to have on just from everything you mentioned. So yeah, I mean, maybe one day
Yes.
we can think about it.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much for.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, then, thank you, Nils, for joining us. Like always, it's been super nice to talk to you.
Yeah, good to see you too again.
And good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you, you too.
And we see each other probably at some beach tournament because you're at every.
Absolutely. Can't wait to get some more beach and sun.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. This was Ultimate Voices Europe, the EUF Diversity Podcast by Jakob and Anika.